Well, there's no better commentator in South Africa on Russian affairs than Professor Irina Filatova from ex-Moscow University, KZN University, and she remains completely in touch with what's happening in that part of the world. When we spoke 2 months ago, we were talking about possible support for the ANC from Russia in the 2024 election, an issue that is of great concern to many people in South Africa. Also, the fantasy of a multipolar world, which South African politicians still seem to believe in. We found out today from Professor Filatova exactly what the ructions of the past week in Russia mean for South Africa. Thank you very much for joining us again, Professor. It's always lovely talking with you, but particularly today, it's over the weekend, I was riveted to my television screen watching what was happening in Russia with this guy called Prigozhin of the Wagner group, attempted coups, etc. Was it just drama for the media, or was there a heck of a lot more behind it?
Well, I'm absolutely sure that there is more behind it, and I think the whole of humanity was absolutely glued to the TVs or radios or whatever, and listening and being absolutely sure that this is more behind it. I do not believe that Prigozhin is a stupid guy who suddenly lost temper and decided to go on the Kremlin. There must have been a lot behind it. And actually, the Americans knew that some of the military, such as General Surovikin, knew about what was coming. So
they knew what was coming. That's a bit concerning, because one does hear all kinds of conspiracy theories that perhaps even the CIA was behind Prigozhin. But maybe let's just start in the beginning. Who is Prigozhin? Who is he, and what is the Wagner Group?
Well, Prigozhin is one of Putin's oligarchs. He is a very rich person. He's owner of very many companies. He started with catering, but before then, of course, he had a very long career, including as a criminal and including as a prisoner. He was imprisoned for some of his crimes. And he started his catering career in the early 1990s. He organized a very fashionable restaurant in St. Petersburg after trading in some hot dogs or whatever. And Putin liked that restaurant and invited famous guests there. Including an American president. I do not now remember who that was, but Prigozhin managed very well. But it turned out that he had some talents and uses in other areas. For example, he has organized a troll factory, which it is claimed interfered in the American elections. He had organized the interventions in Ukraine after the 2014 Maidan revolution or revolt or whatever. Putin calls it a coup. So he organized some Russians to intervene, and that is where, reportedly, according to Prigozhin himself, the Wagner company emerges. That is a private military company which he proudly declares has been operating in Donbass since then and defending Ukrainians from the Ukrainians. So that's his career.
And this army, the Wagner Group, they are also operating in Africa.
They are operating in Syria and they are operating in Africa. There was a lot of attention to the company's operations in Africa. Several countries, Libya, Central African Republic, Mali, Burkina Faso, Sudan. There was an attempt to operate in Mozambique, closer to South African borders, but that ended in disaster for Wagner for now. But the operation in the Sahel, operations in the Sahel seem to be very successful, and there's a whole big network of connections, including logistical connections between, for example, Libya, several Central African Republic, Cameroon, Sudan, etc., etc.
So it's clearly a very potent force. But was there ever any threat over the weekend that Prigozhin and the Wagner group would storm Moscow and take over power from Putin?
Look, we started with how serious it was, and I mentioned General Surovikin. There must have been somebody in the elite who allowed and who was Prigozhin's ally. Maybe there was a whole group of people who were Prigozhin's allies, and who, for one reason or another, decided against supporting him at the last moment. I'm sure Prigozhin was not meant to be a president, but he was meant to scare Putin to such an extent that he would hide away and just leave the capital. This is, of course, just pure guessing, and they are the guessings of many other people and many other commentators on this topic. But there are other guesses. There are other guesses that Prigozhin just decided to go on his own, and then he saw that the population is not opposing, that the military are not opposing. And then he thought, okay, I will come to Moscow, I will occupy the seat in the Kremlin, and now what? What am I going to do? I don't know, but the first version seems to be more plausible. He must have had some allies who decided against it at the last moment. And Prigozhin was left high and dry, and he had to retreat because in such situation he had no choice. But it is interesting that there was practically no opposition. Somebody must have ordered the security arrangements, the security troops on the border and in Rostov-on-Don not to oppose. And the population seemed to be greeting Prigozhin with open hands. So that must have been absolutely scary for Putin. So that is a very important thing. It is interesting. You know, what is interesting also is Putin's reaction. I mean, he was silent for 2 days, right? Then, after everything has been resolved, he spoke. And that is already not anybody's guesses, but it's sort of my understanding of Putin as a political figure. He usually is well prepared. His speeches are targeting a particular audience. It is quite clear from what he did in this particular speech was that he unwillingly and unwittingly he exaggerated the meaning of what was going on. He spoke about the danger to the Russian state. He spoke about the danger of the threat of the civil war. You know, in such circumstances, a politician, the first thing the politician should do, I think, if he wants to show that he's in control, he should say, well, of course, that means nothing and nothing serious has happened. And what is awful is that so many people, that Prigozhin's troops have killed so many people and shot down a plane and several helicopters. That is awful. That's a crime. But of course, there has never been any danger. So that would have been something that somebody who is in control, really in control, would have said. There was another speech also. Sorry, that's an interesting thing for me. When he spoke about thanked his security services and security forces, and he spoke about unity. He thanked them for opposing the attempted coup. It looks like that they didn't particularly oppose. So I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but it is as if Putin tried to create an impression that everything was all right and that the security services were united behind them, and that that whatever the wrong things that have happened, they were not to blame. It was not their fault. And I think he was worried that in fact there was. He didn't want to alert them to his suspicions or whatever.
What is the feedback from family and friends in Russia on what happened?
But they don't know. They said they were scared. They were scared of several things. One was that being cornered, Putin could use nuclear weapons, but I think the whole world was scared of that. And of course, there is a thought behind all that. They are all wondering what will happen now. Will there be more security? Will there be, maybe the country will be closed? What is going to happen? Nobody knows, because Putin is definitely weakened. So that is the general feeling.
When you say Putin is weakened, how so?
Look, it is obvious. He was challenged. His power was challenged. And he definitely did not come on top of it, because nobody stopped Prigozhin, neither at the border, nor on Rostov-on-Don, nor even anywhere on the way. Yelets, where he got to, is so close to Moscow. There was nothing left to I don't know, 2 hours drive, maybe less. So that is one thing. The other thing, he finally comes out and says the mutiny will be crushed, and the people who are faulty will be punished, and they will be severely punished, and they will have to be judged and charged and so on. And then nothing happens. And the guy who organized it all is let go. Just saying the troops who were participating, they were heroes before. Now they are criminals. But they are let go and even offered to be incorporated in the Russian army. So that leaves everybody unhappy. People who are more radical in terms of war than Putin and his the heads of the army, they are unhappy because he didn't. He's not radical enough, and he's punishing the guy who did a lot for the victory, more than anybody else. People who are less radical and want some sort of normalization of the process, and probably not use the criminals and, to somehow turn the army into a normal army. They are also not happy because the law didn't somehow apply to Prigozhin. Everybody is being punished just to saying that the war in prison, just saying that the war is the war and not a special military operation. Now, Prigozhin, who blurted out whatever he thought about that war and said that this was it was started under false pretexts and the army is good for nothing and so on, that is all criminal. in terms of recent Russian laws, and he is let go. So, yes, that shows to very many Russians that Putin is much, much weakened. He is not strong. His position is not strong.
If you bring it back to South Africa now, and given the ANC's close friendship with Putin, the fact that he has now been weakened, does that make any difference in the way that they would be viewing that alliance?
It is very difficult to judge. I haven't noticed any comments from either the ANC or the EFF or the SACP on what happened over the weekend. They were ardent supporters of whatever Putin did or said or whatever, and of Russia, generally speaking. I don't know what effect on their perceptions of Russia it had. Maybe none, but some may have started thinking that, probably there is something wrong with our image of Russia as an anti-imperialist country. Being anti-Western, maybe that is not enough to be considered anti-imperialist, progressive, and so on. But I haven't seen anything. The only thing I have seen is Dirko's and Naledi Pandu's announcement that the peace process would continue and that the peace efforts will continue, and that events over the weekend, the mutiny did not change anything in that.
The fact that there is concerns of Russian interference in the 2024 election, supporting the ANC in financially and in other ways, does that now leave the room, or has that got nothing to do with what happened over the weekend?
Well, it's too early to judge, but as far as events in West Africa are concerned, for example, there is very little that has changed. And Lavrov, Russian foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, announced that the operations in Africa will continue as before. And there are, of course, several aspects of these operations. There are military operations which go on in the Sahel and Sudan, as I said. And then there are political operations and political support to various parties and to various governments is the second element. And then economic relations with several countries is also the third element of this support. And if it goes as it was, and nothing has changed so far in West Africa, then the support for the ANC will continue. I don't see why it would change.
Unless Putin's got other things on his mind.
Yes, we don't know what is going to happen. There are so many unknowns, both about this attempted coup or mutiny or whatever, and about what is going to happen in the near future, because in Russian history, weakened rulers seldom survived for a long time. But again, so much is unknown for now. We shall see. We'll have just to watch what is happening.
What should we look out for?
In terms of Russian politics, not much that you would see or notice. There are so many different small signs of the internal divisions, of internal fragmentation of the power under the carpet. Power struggle under the carpet. That some very important moves that may be difficult to see, but the cadre changes at the top, that would be interesting and significant. Prigozhin demanded the sacking of the defense minister, Shoigu, and the chief of staff, Gerasimov. They are both still in place. We shall see what happens to General Surovikin, maybe with some other people, but we do not know. As far as African operations are concerned, I think that what is happening in West Africa is a good guide. The policy would be the same. And generally speaking, what is happening to Wagner? Because it is a complex company with complex connections. It is not very easy to dismantle it. It's one thing to dismantle several thousand people who were in Russia with Prigozhin and who organized or participated in that drive to Moscow. It is one thing. It is a completely different thing to dismantle the whole body of companies or operations, whatever. They may change the owner. They may change even the name of the company, we do not know. It may have been that this is just the redistribution, yet another redistribution of property, the inter-oligarch fighting. But none of this is a known fact. It is just guesses.
And as far as Prigozhin is concerned, are you expecting him to leave the scene now?
Well, that's the last thing I expect him is to leave the scene. I don't know what the agreement was. I don't know what conditions. He is in Belarus now. He's disappeared for some time. He's in Belarus now, but how long he's going to stay there and whether he is free or not, and how many troops are going to join him, of his troops, because some of them were invited to Belarus to join him. So we do not know what is going to happen with that. If he's free and free to go wherever he wants to, he may choose to go back to Ukraine, to Donbass, to the major body of his troops. He may choose for some time to have a holiday in Africa or to reorganize things in Africa. This is simply the unknowns. But of course, he's in great danger. He's in a real serious danger. And I think that I would not be surprised if he just disappears forever.
Professor Filatova, just to close off with, when you started off, you said that the Americans knew beforehand. How was that possible?
Well, yeah, I think it was New York Times that published the information, and it was since in the public domain. I think that they do have their intelligence even now among the Russian security, or maybe they were forewarned by some Russians, or maybe by somebody else. But that's what they published. It may be false information, who knows?
It's so complex, so interesting. Professor Irina Filatova, thank you for sharing with us. And I'm Alec Hogg from BizNews.com.